Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Gamescript. We got an exciting game tonight between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Miami Dolphins. We're looking at a 52.5 point total with Philly as 3 point favorites. They're playing at home tonight. So it's a close spread, a high total, just like what we like to see with fantasy output, with players that should be active all night and throughout the night and putting up fantasy points. We got Tua, who's leading the league in passing yards, while Hurts is ranked 10th. But what Hurts lacks in his passing yards, he makes up for in rushing yards. He's second in the league in rushing yards, and he leads the league in rushing touchdowns for quarterbacks. So both quarterbacks are top 5 in DraftKings points for fantasy. The problem is neither of these quarterbacks is very good under pressure. Tua and Hurts both have pickable pass differential, both increase at top 4 rates when under pressure. Tua goes from 1.4% to 8.9%, while Hurts goes from 2% to 8.2%. So neither quarterback is very good under pressure. Hurts' completion percentage under pressure drops from 73.6% down to 49.2%, while Tua's drops from 78.1% down to 40.5%. So the $1 million question that I'm going to be asking tonight, in order to attain that 52.5 point total, which of these quarterbacks is going to be able to perform under pressure, and are these defenses going to be able to get pressure on these quarterbacks tonight? Shout out to Taylor Bechtold for those pressure point stats from the analyst.com. Those were good stats. Helped me out with trying to figure out an angle for this game. And I think an angle for this game might be the pressure situation. Like, these quarterbacks' performances under pressure is not very good. If we were looking to go different on this game, with everybody screaming that the total is going to go over, and we want to go under, we have to look at what would cause this game to go under the total. And I think the big red flag in this point total is pressure and how these quarterbacks can perform under pressure. So this is Gamescript. I'm Simon Edwards at Pumacom with Heat Seeker Sports, and we're digging into this Miami versus Philadelphia Gamescript, and we're going to be doing a few DraftKings lineups. We're going to be looking at DraftKings Showdown tonight and figuring out our favorite players for the slate and which direction we can go in to try to get different, because we want to compete against 20% of the field as opposed to 80% of the field. So we're going to look at this game and do some analysis. I'll let you know the players that I like the most and stuff like that. And I'm looking for 15 likes on this video so I can put out a shorter video later on today where I can give you more up-to-date thoughts on this game, because we got a lot of injury situations going on. Most of it is on the offensive and defensive lines of these teams. We do have, a couple guys who are out already, which are going to be consequential to this game. We'll look at that in a minute. But as I said, please hit like on the video and hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I put out these shows for every one of these island games, and I dig into it with a bunch of research and try to figure out angles we can take to have a little bit of an edge when we're looking at these games. So going to take a look right now at the DraftKings layout. We'll go over all these individual players. Tyreek Hill is the most expensive player on this slate. Understandably, he's at $18K. Tyreek, that's $18K for the captain. He's at $12K for flex position. Tyreek is a little pricey on this slate, but for good reason. He's been a stud this year, and he's got a pretty good matchup. We'll take a look at the matchup real quick. Philly has been giving up about 19 points to wideouts and 24.5 points to slot receivers this season. So that sets up Tyreek to have a decent matchup against the secondary here. And he's understandably the highest price guy on the slate. So Tyreek, you don't need me to tell you to plug him in. He's had 10 targets, 9 targets, 5 targets, 11 targets. So getting targeted about double digits in almost every game. And his fantasy output has been ridiculous. He's scoring, like over 30 fantasy points in more than half of his games. So yeah, Tyreek is a stud. You don't need me to tell you to start him. I don't have any reason to take an angle against him tonight and to fade him. Maybe in the captain. Maybe I'll go a different direction in the captain just because we're going to need the salary tonight with all these studs in this game. Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts has been a little bit sluggish this season. If you take a deep dive into his numbers, a lot of these fantasy outputs that he's had has been affected by tush-push touchdowns. So without these, 1-yard rushing touchdowns, a lot of these games would be under 20 fantasy points. He did put up 31 fantasy points against the Rams a couple weeks ago, but overall, he hasn't been as impressive as he was last year. We're only looking at 2 games where he threw over 300 yards. As far as his rushing, he's put up, he's the lead rusher for quarterbacks in the league. So he's been putting up a good, fantasy output for rushing. And he's got a lot of rushing touchdowns. And those touchdowns have basically, been saving him in fantasy. In week 2, he had 2 of those rushing touchdowns. If he didn't have those, he'd be down to about 14 fantasy points. In week 3, he had 1 rushing touchdown. If without that, he would have been at 15 fantasy points. And then last week against the Jets, he had another rushing touchdown. Without that, he would have been at around 16, 17 fantasy points. So it's been a weird offense for the Eagles this year. It seems like they haven't figured it out yet under this new offensive coordinator, and they're just taking a while to figure it out. They got upset by the Jets last week. I was kind of calling that for the past few weeks while analyzing these Eagles. I thought the upset would come at a different, earlier point in the season, but it came versus the Jets. I would not be surprised to see them lose to the Dolphins tonight, but it should be a close game regardless. And we're just looking at, fantasy here. So Tua Tagovailoa, I always get that name messed up. He has been great this year. He's been scoring, pretty much 20 points a game. He's had a couple games in there where he scored under 20 points. So, he's not as good upside as Jalen Hurts. I like Jalen Hurts upside a lot more than I like Tua's, even though I like Tua. But if I'm having to choose a quarterback to fade in this game tonight, it might be Tua. So Tua, as good as he's been this year, MVP type of season, as far as a fantasy perspective, with his price being at 10.6 as a flex position, he might be a guy that we want to consider fading tonight. AJ Brown has been a stud. He's been going off the past 4 weeks, but we know that pendulum is going to swing over to Devontae Smith at some point, and this could be the night. Usually this stuff happens during showdown slates. He had 25 points, 41 points, 21 points, and 23 points the past few weeks. So he's just been on fire. He's been getting targeted, pretty much double digit every week for the past 4 weeks. And AJ Brown has a good matchup tonight as well with Miami. They're giving up 14.2 points a game, DraftKings points a game to wideouts. So, maybe not that great. It might give us a reason to go Devontae Smith over AJ Brown, with seeing that we're going to want to choose one of these receivers probably. And AJ Brown being the more expensive one at 10,000, not having that, quite that matchup that jumps out of the page. Let's take a look at what my receivers have done against Miami so far this season. Get a better idea here. So Miami has given up. They gave up 14 points to Keenan Allen. They gave up. No one big on the Patriots had any significant output. 21 points to Cortland Sutton. They gave up 39 points to Stephon Diggs, 15 to Gabe Davis in the same game. Stephon Diggs so far the big winner against Miami. Giants didn't do anything. Giants suck. Adam Thielen scored 31 points against them. So if I'm looking at these players that seem to do well against Miami, it seems like slot receivers and tight ends do pretty good against Miami. So that's something that we're going to keep in mind tonight. And then Cortland Sutton, also did well. Hunter Henry got 17 points against Miami as well, just to give you another tight end there that has done well against them. So AJ Brown, he could be a guy that we don't necessarily need to jam in tonight. So Raheem Mostert has a difficult matchup. Philly's got a good run D. Mostert has been on fire this year. He's the lead rusher in the league. And from a fantasy perspective, he's up there. Like if not one, then he's right behind whoever the leader is. 37 points, 45 points, 28 points are 3 of the weeks that he's put out for us. Jeff Wilson is back tonight. That's something we're going to want to keep an eye out on. That's going to be an important piece of information. But the Eagles are good against the run regardless. The Eagles are probably one of the best teams against the run. They're only allowing 14 fantasy points a game, DraftKings points a game to running back. As far as, maybe taking a look at who they've faced so far this season to have such a good output against running backs, they have faced Ramondre Stevenson. They've faced Alexander Madison, Rashad White, Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson, Kyron Williams, and Breece Hall. Breece Hall's the best running back that they've faced, and Breece Hall scored 20 fantasy points against them. So if you see any lowering of Raheem Mostert's ownership, that might be a way for us to go because they haven't faced any good running backs so far this season, and Mostert would be probably, one of the best, right up there with Breece Hall that they've faced so far this season. Jalen Waddle is a good receiver on the Miami side. He hasn't really done anything, though, recently. He scored 18 points last week, 14 points the week before that, and then he was a little sluggish for the rest of the games that he played. Targets, he's been getting up in targets these last couple weeks, 9 targets and 10 targets. I actually might lean more towards Waddle tonight versus this matchup, just because we're going to be looking for probably salary saving, and getting up to AJ Brown and Tyreek Hill is going to be tough. And I think Waddle and Devontae Smith have just as good matchups, and they've been kind of left in the dust recently. So there might be an effort to get them the ball more, with attention being on the number ones in this game tonight. DeAndre Swift has a good matchup tonight too. I like DeAndre Swift a lot tonight. He is facing a Miami defense that has basically given up, 21.6 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. But DeAndre Swift is a guy that I like in this matchup, just assuming that Philly is gonna want to pass short and in the middle of the field. And I think they're going to be doing a lot of dump offs tonight to DeAndre Swift. Vic Fangio's defense challenges you to be patient and do short passes. And DeAndre Swift, being used in the passing game a lot recently would kind of lend to. He got 10 targets last week and 6 targets the week before that, to give you an idea. I like DeAndre Swift in this matchup tonight, and I think that he's going to get a lot of usage. Devontae Smith, I like Devontae Smith tonight too, because he hasn't done anything recently. He's got 11 targets last week, 5 targets, 9 targets, 5 targets, but he hasn't done anything with it. It looked like he was going to come out of the gates hot, and he did, with 17 points and 26 points, and then he's been a forgotten man since then, ever since A.J. Brown threw his little temper tantrum. and started getting the ball more. Devontae Smith has been left in the dust. The pendulum's got to swing at some point, and I think that tonight might be a night for that for Devontae Smith. Dallas Goedert is the guy that I like tonight a lot. Goddard has probably the best matchup on the slate with 12.9 points is what the Dolphins are allowing to tight end position. So Dallas Goedert I like a lot, and Dallas Goedert has the upside to put up a monster captain week as he did in week 5 versus the Rams, 28.7 points. I'm imagining that Dallas Goedert will be relatively low owned tonight relative to the field. He's right in that price range with Devontae Smith. So people are going to lean more towards Smith than they will towards Goddard. Let me check and see, what we're looking at for ownership for Devontae or for Dallas Goedert. Total ownership on Goddard is going to be, he's down there. He's at 28% total. As far as a captain, he's 6%. So he jumps out the page to me tonight, especially if we're going to use a angle of an under in this game, and hope that the defenses can get pressure on these quarterbacks and make them, not great tonight. So if we skip down these backup quarterbacks, we get to the Sanders and Elliott. Elliott has been doing a lot more damage than Sanders this year. If you see Elliott, every week has been double-digit fantasy points except for one, and that was last week against the Jets. But he has 2 weeks in there with 18 fantasy points, and then he's got 2 weeks with 11, and he's got a week of 12. So he's been on fire this year. Sanders, and that goes back to that new offensive coordinator. They're not scoring as many touchdowns, and they're able to move the ball. But Elliott has been just taking advantage of that, scoring all these field goals, and basically mopping up the points for all these guys. Jason Sanders. Sanders has not really done a whole lot this year. He's had 2 double-digit points. That's because the Dolphins are able to get all those touchdowns. They have been having a lot of success with these touchdowns. So, I tend to lean towards the Elliott side if I'm picking a kicker tonight. So we'll dig into that when we're building a lineup, though. Salvin Ahmed has been the backup running back for Miami, but we have Jeff Wilson coming back tonight, and Jeff Wilson is only $200. Jeff Wilson is, he might be like super chalky tonight. I don't know how much usage he's going to get tonight, but he's been activated off the injured reserve, and he will be making his debut tonight. Miami has just been wounded warriors with the running backs. We lost A-Chain already last week. Chris Brooks went to IR, or he hurt his ankle or whatever. He was a rookie running back, so it was left to only Mostert. Mostert last week had a pretty decent week, but now he gets Jeff Wilson back in the mix. And Jeff Wilson was basically the lead running back last year for the Dolphins, so we don't know how he's going to get used, and how he's going to benefit from the scheme this year, which has been insane for these running backs. These running backs have gone nuts. I don't know if it's credit to the running backs or credit to the scheme this year, but all the running backs from Miami have gone nuts, and A-Chain is on IR. Opens the door for Wilson coming back to get his old role back, and he's only $200. He's facing a tough Philly defense, but as we went over earlier, there's only one running back that they faced so far that is any good, and that's Breece Hall. So that sets up, the potential for, some sneaky running back plugins tonight. And Miami's going to need to get that running game going, because they don't want to be a one-dimensional offense. They want to be an offense that, is able to be a balanced offense. That's their game. They like to be a balanced offense. So that'll help them out with pressures too. Because if they're a one-dimensional offense and like Philly's able to get a bunch of pressure on Miami, then that's gonna just kill Tua's completion percentage. He's like a deer in headlights with pressure. So it's gonna be they're gonna need him to be able to get that running game going in order to protect Tua a little bit. So maybe in the lineups that we build, they don't get that those running backs going, because if we're playing for an under tonight, we got to think of the story that we can tell to make that happen. And what we know is this pressure situation, how these quarterbacks perform under pressure. Kenny Gainwell is a RB2 for Philly this year. In the beginning of the season, people thought he was going to be the RB1, but Swift came in when Gainwell got hurt, and Swift, easily won the job. Gainwell has not done too much since. He's had, 7 attempts a couple weeks ago, but beyond that, he hasn't even gotten attempts. He hasn't gotten the fantasy output. He's nothing that we really need to fear for DeAndre Swift, and Gainwell's at 3,800. So he's a little bit expensive on top of that. But, Gainwell is a good guy to plug in when you're at that point where you're like, have $4,000 in salary and you need to figure out a direction. So Dolphins D is going to be interesting tonight. Dolphins D, they have some good pass rushers. Bradley Chubb, they have, I'm not sure what Xavier, let's see what his status is tonight. He was questionable last time I looked. Let's see. Xavier Howard is questionable. We have to keep an eye on that, because if we're going to play the Miami defense, we need to make sure that they have, at least one of their corners in there. Jalen Ramsey's obviously has not played this season. The other injury status is Lane Johnson on the Eagles side. Lane Johnson is, one of the starting offensive linemen. He's an all-pro. We don't want to lose him if, you want any hope of Jalen Hurts not being under pressure tonight. But Lane Johnson hurt tonight, sets up the potential for Jalen Hurts to be under pressure a lot tonight and making mistakes. So that is a good thing for our Miami defense play if we want to play Miami's defense. And that goes to potential under in this game too, if Miami's defense is doing well. So keep Miami's defense in your player pool, even though they haven't really done anything. They had a decent game a couple weeks ago against the Giants. Not very explosive offense. I think Vic Fangio, being a new DC with his team, is still trying to figure it out. But they've been better like these past few weeks, at least. They only allowed 21 points. Well, Carolina. They allowed 16 to the Giants. So, they haven't been horrible. They've had 2 games where they allowed, Buffalo to blow them out at 48-20, and then the Chargers, they allowed 34 points too. But other than that, they've played a bunch of scrub teams, so nothing to write home there. They're gonna have probably their toughest matchup tonight, or one of their toughest matchups tonight. So Dolphins defense, just keep them in mind. Maybe they get a pick 6 tonight. Eagles defense has traditionally been explosive, but they have not been that great this year. They're one of the defenses that I like to target in fantasy. I targeted them last week with the Jets. And tonight, obviously they face a high-powered offense. Like I said, they've been bad against the running back, but they haven't really faced any running backs except for Breece Hall, and they gave up 20 points to Breece Hall. So Eagles defense, they are vulnerable. Slot receivers are giving up 24.6 points, 19.2 to wideouts, 19.7 to quarterbacks, 12.5 to tight ends. So, Eagles defense has some good pieces to it. They got Darius Slay. I think Roby is out tonight. Roby is their slot corner, and if he's out, they're already missing Avonte Maddox. This is going to be a point of weakness for the Eagles. We got to find out like which guy is going to benefit the most from that, missing slot corner. And Braxton Berrios is their slot receiver, but Braxton Berrios, I mean, he's not the type of guy that we're going to capitalize on. He got 17.4 points against Buffalo, so maybe he's got some upside. Braxton Berrios, keep him in your player pool because whoever the slot receiver for the Dolphins is going to do well tonight. And Braxton Berrios right now has that role. But we got a couple new players on each of these teams this week. We got Julio Jones, who's joining the Eagles. Julio Jones is going to be interesting. Don't know how he's going to be used. But he is on the Eagles now, and he's in the player pool at 2,000, which is interesting. We got Chase Claypool too. Now, Chase Claypool, I'm a little bit more interested in because he was used as a slot receiver over in Chicago, and there was talk about making him into a tight end over in Miami. So Chase Claypool, if he's used as a slot receiver or a tight end, Eagles are giving up 24.6 points a game to the slot. They're giving up 12.5 points a game to tight ends. So those are the sweet spots of that Eagles defense. And Chase Claypool, we don't know what kind of usage he's going to get, or what his role is going to be in this offense. But if he comes in and he has a role in this offense right off the bat at $1,000, you can do worse than Chase Claypool. He could get 10 points tonight. He could get a touchdown and 40 yards, or a touchdown and 20 yards and 2 receptions. That's all it takes. So Chase Claypool is interesting tonight. And then we got Jeff Wilson, as I already talked about. Olamide Zaccheaus, I don't know what the effect of Julio Jones is going to be on this dude. He went off the last showdown slate we had at 13.8 points, but he has not done anything since. He's had, he gets a max of 2 targets a week. He had 1 week where he got 3 targets. So he's been non-existent. Durham Smythe, this is part of the reason they brought Chase Claypool in, because Smythe, is their leading tight end. And then look at what he's done. He's done nothing. He's got 8.1 points. They got rid of Mike Gesicki in the offseason because he didn't really fit the offense. And Durham Smythe became the lead pass catching tight end, but they don't use him. So enter Chase Claypool, who is that big body type of receiver. They can have Durham Smythe blocking more, and Chase Claypool, obviously a pure receiver. So that makes him, I'm interested in Chase Claypool and seeing how they use him tonight and sprinkling them into some lineups. Boston Scott, not really interested there. Jeff Wilson, we talked about. Other than that, CJ Wilson is the only other dude. He's playing some slot reps too. Had 4 targets a few weeks ago. 9.2 fantasy points, though. He hasn't really done anything. I like Berrios over CJ Wilson, honestly, but $200, is the salary you're dealing with CJ Wilson, which makes him interesting. Other than that, not really seeing anyone else below that is interesting. So given these pieces that we are seeing, let's try to build a lineup. First, I'm going to go into my optimizer, and I'm going to put out an optimal lineup so we can kind of get an idea of maybe which direction the field will be leaning tonight. Just give me a second here. So I'm going to take out a few of these captain spots and then do an optimal real quick, and then we'll build that over here. Well, they got Jeff Wilson in the optimal as a captain. So I'm going to take him out of captain real quick. Let's see. You don't want to Jeff Wilson is not the worst, guy to put in captain just because we're going to be looking for salary relief tonight, and he's projected at 8 points. So I mean, it's not horrible. I'll build it and show you guys what they're doing with Jeff Wilson and the captain here real quick. Jeff Wilson in the captain. They got Jeff Wilson in the captain. They got Devontae Smith. Let's see. We got Smith. They got Swift too. They got Tua, Hurts, and Hill. So Tua, Hurts, and Hill. And that's how, like the optimizer is putting out the optimal. Yeah, cash game maybe. I don't know. Like I've got a different direction in mind, but that's what the first thing that at least my optimizer is putting out. So take it with a grain of salt. But I think a more popular way to go tonight is going to be probably putting in a guy like Hurts, Hurts in the captain. If you're putting Hurts in the captain, you want to put him with 2 pass catchers. So given his expensiveness, maybe people lean more towards Devontae Smith and, like Dallas Goedert or DeAndre Swift. So maybe we put in Swift. I think Swift will be more popular. We're going to have to put in a guy on the Miami side. Let's try to put in Hill there. Leaves us with 5,500. So, if we're going in this direction, maybe a kicker is where people would go. Let's put in Elliott, and 700 is what it leaves. So people are going to be jamming in. I bet you like Jeff Wilson will be a guy that people are trying to jam in tonight. So if we put him in there, I mean, you can put either of the kickers in at that point. I think that this will probably be a pretty popular way to go tonight. So it gives you an idea of what a chalky build might be tonight. I'm going to go in a different direction. I like Goedert tonight in the captain. I think Goedert can have a big game tonight, and that's a weakness on Miami side. And by the way, it's like the Spider-Man meme with defenses tonight, because Vic Fangio was a consultant for the Eagles last year, consulting their defense, helped them develop their scheme, and he's the DC of Miami now. So Vic Fangio, don't rule out the potential that he knows this offense well and he knows how to scheme against them. So he likes to, I believe he likes to blitz a lot, and he likes to kind of leaves that intermediate, like he guards deep. He leaves that intermediate part of the field pretty open. So that's why I like Goedert tonight. And along with Goedert, I like Swift. I'm going to put Swift in there. Obviously, like Hurts. So those are 3 Eagles right off the bat. Let's try it with Hill. See what it leaves us. It leaves us with 46.50. If we have 46.50, I can go down here. I could put in Jeff Wilson in here just to see where it leaves us. This is with 9K. That's 9K. That can get us Waddle. That leaves us a lot of options. Actually, I don't mind that at all. Also leaves us like Devontae Smith if we wanted to go that way and do a 4-2 Philly build. Leaves us a lot of options. That Jeff Wilson play is going to be probably pretty popular tonight. If you wanted to leave him out and go with maybe, let's say Waddle, that only leaves us with 700. Oops. If we wanted to go with Smith, that leaves us at least 1,900. That gives us, like a few options, like that Chase Claypool play I was talking about earlier. Leaves us with Jeff Wilson option. Just a decent amount of options with this direction. You can obviously mix and match with these guys up here. Maybe put in Waddle instead of Tyreek. Let's put in Waddle and see what that does for us. Leaves us with 5,300. That puts us in kicker range, and gives us some better options there too. So those are some directions that we can go tonight. Just don't necessarily like play for a over. Consider that these quarterbacks could be under pressure tonight and underperforming. So these studs that are overpriced, like AJ Brown at 10K, Tua at 10.6, Tyreek at 12, they might underperform tonight, which leaves these this mid-range of players wide open and gives you a more of an opportunity to build a balanced build. So that's kind of a direction I like to go. Let's say, like, for the sake of it, if we put in a defense, let's say we wanted to put in the Eagles defense, that leaves us with 9,700. You know, like you put in Devontae Smith. I mean, that's probably leaving too much. If you wanted to go with the Dolphins defense too, you know, same situation. But you'll play around with those defenses, see if you can go get a direction that you like there. Hit the like button. Looking for 15 likes to put out a shorter video a little bit later on. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube page. It's at Heatseeker Sports over on X. You can follow me at Pumacom. And that's it for this week. And hopefully I'll be putting out a shorter video later. Thanks, guys.